I wonder how many people, let's throw it out there. I wonder how many people feel guilt on a daily basis. They sit around and they look at their lives and they look at the comforts that they have and they know that it's bankrupt. They know that deep down they're supposed to be doing something else with their lives. Like, do you ever wonder, just like as a short story, like if let's just you throw the Christian myth out there. Okay, so there's this Jesus fella who shows up, and then there's supposed to be the second coming, and like imagine that the second coming shows up, but he doesn't really know that he's Jesus, and everyone else tells him he's a crackpot, so they put him on various drugs to keep him from preaching his savior stuff. I don't think it's really like that, but I could imagine that Jesus consciousness, or realizing that the meaning of life will be enriched, enlarged, and that one can have a fulfilled, personally meaningful life if one takes on suffering on oneself so as to lessen it for others. And you can transcend your own suffering by turning it into meaningful suffering. And we take that whole myth, that whole story of Jesus. I wonder how many people feel it in their own lives and yet are unable to respond to the call. Like, is there a psychological sense that one ought to be spending less? I just give you one example. I recently went out to eat, and we had a guest speaker here, a visiting scholar at the campus, and quite a distinguished scholar, very accomplished, many books. He's world traveler, all this kind of stuff. And then there was, of course, a dinner. Several people were invited to a dinner, and the dinner was at a pretty upscale, swanky place. And there were people there, looking around. If you look at the other tables, people were ordering expensive bottles of wine, and I can only imagine there were six of us, but it was probably a couple $100 for the dinner. People were probably spending 50, 60, $80 a person, especially those people who were drinking. They had, pretty hefty bills. And then you see all the people starving, all the people who, are utterly destitute, and other people are here doing whatever they're doing, spending their money on their latest shoes, on their $80 bottle of wine. What is all of that? Don't they feel guilt? Don't they feel like, what the hell am I doing? This is not right. I wonder sometimes if the whole sickness of the culture, like it's all just sick. And the sickness comes from like an overall pervasive bad conscience. It's like tons and tons and tons of people know that all of their basic life practices are just bankrupt. They're so suspicious. They're so self-gratifying, so self-indulgent, so pandering to an ego that has now become a dragon. It rules over their lives. And it even is such a dragon now that it allows them to hide from their guilt. Only at certain moments does the guilt poke out. Say, hey, what are you doing? This is preposterous. And I think what's so funny about it is that I think people think they're sticking it to someone. The ego does. Now, not the people. The voice of conscience that whispers, hey, this might not be right, that part of you, I think that would need to be awakened by diligent work, effort, sacrifice. And when that happens, suddenly the person says, I wouldn't want it any other way. But I think while the ego as a dragon is just sort of ruling this sort of self-indulgent, ego-gratifying practices, it's so hard, I guess, to shock people into saying, is this really in your best interest? It's like the person who goes to the all-you-can-eat buffet and they think they're sticking it to someone by eating way too much money, way too much food for the money. Yeah, you really stuck it to them. You have a huge gut. You're probably on a way to an early heart attack, diabetes, other things. But because you got more than your money's worth, you cheated someone. So I think this is kind of the logic that many people have taken. It's like their physical body aches and has pains from a misguided ego trying to get more than what it paid for and somehow thought it was superior in doing so. I wonder how many people really know in their own lives and can feel it that they're happy. I mean, genuinely, they achieve a kind of happiness when they help others in need, when they actually give to others, when they have a meaningful job, when they have meaningful relationships with their neighbors, when when time calls upon them and they're able to respond. So I think it's on many fronts. Many people no longer have the world call upon them. We believe that we do people a favor by providing for them. And the people who do the providing, oh, it may feel very good. But to the people who've only been provided for, they become a kind of stall-fed animal that is addicted to the tether of comfort and convenience and ease that has come from being provided for. I mean, I do think there is a material ground for all of our experiences. I just saw a video on juggling and how juggling affects your brain. It's such a good example that the actual material things you do affect your consciousness. They affect your brain, they affect your insides, your neurological configurations, right? All the ways that your brain is wired and is the kinds of connectivity that you have between neurons. Those can be strengthened or they can be let into a kind of an atrophy. And it's the resonance of what we do and how that affects us. I think there are some feelings that some people will never have, that there are some meaning horizons some people will never know of if they don't actually go engage in the world in material ways. It may actually require physical acts of engaging the world to bring about the kind of meaning horizons of peace of mind, of tranquility, of eudaimonia, of happiness, but not like, yeah, I'm happy like I'm in a pleasurable state, like genuine adult happiness, like happiness that comes from knowing that one has met one's duties I guess with confidence as the best that one could. And I really do believe, I do believe this, that those people who have been called upon and have given, have felt it. One of my beloved authors, Saint-Exupéry, the French novelist, he was a French nobleman, was wealthy, grown up with so much privilege, and he found himself miserable. And he tells of flying his plane, the Lightning, and trying to save other people who had been downed in the Sahara Desert. And he says, sharing your last crust of bread with people who were otherwise dying in the desert was some of the true riches of his life. And there are so many other people, I think of Ernest Becker, who describes when he was part of a battalion in war, that he was part of a group that had freed up a Nazi concentration camp and had hauled a bunch of people out of there and risked his life to help free those other people. And he says, compared to every other experience in life, it just seemed, everything else seemed insignificant. I wonder how many people think life itself stinks, doesn't have meaning, is insignificant, because they're not willing to throw themselves and willing to suffer for some cause that lessens the suffering of others. All of us suffer. All of us die in the end. But not all of us have figured out a way to transcend that suffering into meaningful action. I think that's the question. Thanks.